Ryan.
Today, we are learning basketball with Ben Pfeifer, NBA freelancer, writer, scout, working with sportscasting, Sportskeeda, and the Pro 16 League. Check out his Twitter at BJPF_, and his YouTube for throwback NBA draft scouting and daily live videos. He's been writing some of my favorite draft work for years now. Back in the day, his scouting report on Onyeka Okongwu was my absolute favorite of the whole class.
Man, what a time.
Oh man, that was the time indeed. And I gotta start with the important question: where did you end up finishing in this Mizzou Chicks Bachelor contest?
I won it. Don't you remember?
Oh man, I couldn't find the official results. I saw the voting tweets.
That was a long time ago. That was a time in my life, man. That was
a former life. So you're not eyeing any future ones here in the near future? I mean, what do you got in your bag?
Yeah, maybe if they want to, maybe if the Bachelor comes calling, I'll see what they're up to. No, that's
all right. We gotta keep an eye on it. So I just had to know the answer. But what we're really here to talk about is his Thunder Draft Retrospective with Swish Theory. Really cool idea, inspired from I forget who wrote it, but a Colts type article.
Yeah,
Zach Hicks with the Colts, where he tries to kind of like figure out what type of player Sam Presti has drafted in the past and use that information to project who he's going to draft in the future. And he hit on all these different traits, from wingspan to impact stats to the feel, the physicality, the shooting.
And of course, I didn't include the guy they drafted in the lottery.
But I was going through that, and I saw the first guy on your list for in case they trade down was Dylan Jones. So
I did get that one.
Yeah, you got one going there. It's you're playing the odds. So what made you want to write this piece, and maybe generally backing up a little bit, how do you decide your writing process in general? Like what goes into your thought process?
So yeah, like you said, I was inspired by my guy Zach Hicks, who writes about the Colts. He does this thing with with obviously football is like combine stats was the main focus, which that stuff doesn't matter as much for basketball. But I'm like, I don't know, I just thought that was a really cool idea to try to like observe these past trends. And most NBA GMs just like don't have enough of a sample size because either they've not been around long enough or like they have 1 or 2 picks a year, whereas like football GMs can have 10 picks in a year, right? Where you can learn a lot about their tendencies. But Presti is one of the rare ones that's been around for so long. Like he's been the GM of the Sonics/Thunder since 2007. So there's 15 plus years of data to analyze. So yeah, I had a fun time going back and just like looking through all the stats and the different statistical indicators and all of that stuff, and trying to kind of figure out what the average Presti guy looked like. Like I said, Topic I definitely did not expect. Mostly I think just like kind of I don't think he would have been there if it wasn't for his injury concerns, and I think like I'll give myself a pass on that one because
I mean, it felt like during the draft where almost like they're so loaded with talent, they might as well take the guy that has high talent threshold,
exactly,
but is probably going to miss a season anyway because of the injuries, and just kind of keep him in the collection of talent.
It was an understandable swing, for where this Thunder team is at. Or it's like, we could take a guy like Devin Carter or whoever who we know who's gonna contribute. But one, Presti doesn't tend to take older players in the lottery. Like it's just not something that he's done historically, and like makes sense for them. Like I don't know if they expected Topic to be there. I'm pretty sure I remember like Topic didn't even like work out or something with the Thunder, or like there was some like he wasn't expecting to go there, and I'm guessing they weren't expecting him to be there. But yeah, Dylan Jones was one that I did definitely expect the Thunder to draft, just like a wingspan freak who's also a really smart player, really physically imposing, just like ticks a lot of the boxes that the Thunder looked for. Hey, they didn't draft any of the players who I didn't think they were going to draft. So
hey, but you put in the work and you nailed one of the targets there, and so I would say coming into the article, the two ideas that I think of with Presti, and maybe where the divide is that early on, after finding KD, Durant, Harden, and Westbrook, that he drafted a lot of length. Like he surrounded them with wingspan, but it wasn't necessarily about the ball skills. And then somewhere along the line, he was targeting quote unquote good basketball players, guys that could just dribble, pass, and shoot, and had clearly developable all around games that impacted the game in more of an all around way. So what did you find in your research that kind of backs that up or even expands on that, or that you found interesting, and what kind of the switch was from one to the next?
Yeah, so Presti talked about like his kind of philosophy shift and just wanting to focus on like high field guys more. And you can definitely see that like post 2019, like the quote unquote rebuild era, where they really kind of marked the shift, right? Where they went away from these prospect, like, you know, Hami Diallo, Terrence Ferguson types who are just like really raw, toolsy guys. And they kind of shifted to taking guys like, you know, Topic, Josh Giddey, Pokashevsky, you know, to mixed results for sure. I think I had it in the article, like the average pick of a Presti guy post 2019 was like almost a 1.5 assist to turnover ratio. Um, so yeah, I definitely think there was kind of a shift, but he definitely still values those physical tools where it's like maybe not just like raw wingspan per se. And I guess clearly he doesn't, you know, the wingspan thing isn't as important yet because you know, Topic is notably like a negative or zero wingspan guy who Presti ended up drafting. But Topic is a really high field player. And one thing that Presti has always valued is the age thing. Like he's always taken young players. Like the oldest lottery pick he ever like the J Dub pick was an outlier in terms of age, in terms of lottery picks. Like he was 21.2 on draft night, and the average like the average draft pick is he's taken is under 20 in the lottery, right? And like it's not like dead wingspan, right? Like J Dub, Cason Wallace, Chet are all super long players, and Dylan Jones, like we said, as well. So I do think there might be a bit of a shift, right, later in the process towards like these smart, quick decision making basketball players, and also I think an uptick in like shooting thing. Like they'll still draft, you know, questionable shooters like Giddey and Jang, right? But they do draft more shooters, I think, as well. Or they've kind of focused on acquiring shooters, whether that's like Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins or whoever.
Yeah, you noted all this in the article. You can find it on Switch Theory, how, you know, he seems to be targeting, whether it's efficient or not, they definitely have the high volume of 3-point shooting where
For
you
sure.
know they're not afraid to get the shots up. You mentioned obviously the long wingspan, the younger age, the high impact stats. 19 of the 21 picks you mentioned posted a +4 BPM. And also, I thought was interesting, usually have a specialty where they dominate one category at the very least, skill set wise, like passing or shooting, rebounding, foul drawing, which could, in theory, help create a little bit of floor balance for the final product of finding guys that are high impact, have all these ancillary traits, but are also specialty in one thing, so that when you're building out the lineups, you create a complementary pieces together.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Right. And, you know, high feel, high physicality. You have a few kind of average marks for each position, even where, um, like the guards. There's a ton of stats here. I don't know if you want to hit on any certain ones, but he's taken 11 guards, 12 wings, 9 bigs, and they kind of all have everything you said already, like high assist to turnover ratio, draw a lot of fouls, get up a lot of threes, grab a lot of
Yeah,
boards. Like they're just good basketball players that do a lot of things well.
for sure.
And
Yeah,
so
like
what
the
stood out?
well-roundedness, you know, like along with the physical tools, you know, it's like yeah, draft, you know, well-rounded players who are good and have physical tools. Like sure, that's what everyone wants, but I do
Who would
think
have thought? Who would have
definitely we
thought?
can kind of hone in on what the Thunder have liked to do, and also how they've, you know, changed their philosophy or adjusted and adapted, right? Because that's what good GMs and good evaluators do, right? They change their opinions and their ideas as the game evolves and as their thoughts and things evolve and such.
For sure, and I wonder how much of kind of the Thunder, the early Thunder, with the big three knocking on the door, but maybe having a few too many holes in the role players getting attacked on both ends, has to do with that shift where he just kind of shifts towards like no one's going to have a hole. Everyone's going to be able to guard their own position, be strong and long for their position, be smart, quick decision makers, can dribble, pass, and shoot, attack the closeout, spread the floor, and just kind of keep the ball moving so there's not like a clear weakness to get attacked in the playoffs.
Right. I mean, we saw it last year, right, where they were able, the Mavs were able to kind of take advantage of OKC's lack of like secondary creation outside of the main guys. And like this year we see Wiggins creating more off the dribble. Like that's why they draft like AJ Mitchell and probably like Dylan Jones, hopefully eventually. And obviously Topic will be able to create and stuff. But like, yeah.
Yeah, Topic is super interesting on this team. I want to say he's been playing with Jokic overseas, like on Serbia. Is that where? Do I have that right?
I don't think so. Just because he was hurt this summer, yeah, because he got hurt or he got hurt early in the Adriatic, or early like moving up to the EuroLeague last year, and missed most of the season. And then he tried to come back later in the EuroLeague season and just like didn't look the same athletically. And then he re-injured he re-injured one of his legs, and just like didn't look the same athletically. So I guess like maybe some concern about like is it going to be like for Topic is a guy who's definitely reliant on his burst, being able to get downhill and get to the basket, like that's his best thing. So obviously he's got to be able to get back to that athleticism. And yeah, like he's he's 18. ACL injuries these days are definitely not like career enders like they maybe were at some point. So I've got faith that he can get back from his injury, but definitely want to make sure we see him get fully healthy. And I think landing in OKC was a great spot for him because he can rest as long as he needs to. They just did this with Chet, and we're seeing the benefits of that, right? And I think they're probably, hopefully, going to do the same thing with Topic, right? Like give him as much time as he needs, get him healthy, get him up to speed on the bench or, in practice, just learning. Easy.
For sure. And Topic can run an offense. I remember just like rough, like whether or not it was with Jokic, I remember seeing him play somewhere with Serbia, and he can at least initiate a little offense, be the traditional point guard type, maybe replace a little bit of what Giddey gave them before moving on from him in terms of playmaking. And we'll see. You can't have enough talent, and that it was just worth the dice roll on that level of talent. And yeah, exactly with Chet. I mean, you have the runway where there's no pressure to like rush back from injury. Like they're going to be contending with or without him. Bring him on at his own pace. And I mean, like you said, Chet's balling out this year or last year. Obviously, he popped out, and then he took another leap. It seems all. In at least the first game, he looks like a monster. Like I think it was 25, 14,
yeah, he's
4
looking
blocks.
Sick early in the season.
Yeah, like he's coming to play. So before we hop to the Thunder this year, one more question on the piece. Like what kind of made you kind of target Dylan Jones, for example? What were the attributes that made you think they would target him? And then which prospect do you think would have fit this prediction perfect had they had maybe like the third or the seventh pick in the draft, a little higher in the lottery? Who really would have fit like this prediction archetype?
Yeah, so Dylan Jones just like hit all of the indicators, like super long wingspan, really productive, really efficient assist to turnover wise, ton of rebounds, takes threes, gets to the line. The only thing was the age, but Presti's been more willing to take older guys later in the draft. Like he definitely seems to care about age earlier in the draft, right? Hence, passing on guys like Zach Edey or actually he didn't have a chance to take Edey, or like Devin Carter for someone for a younger player like Topic. But yeah, Jones just like hit all the markers for like the kind of things the Thunder like. So that one I felt good about that one. Just like very much a fit. And then I think the two prospects that to me were like the most Presti fits were the UConn guys, Castle and Klingon, who they didn't get high enough to draft either of them, but I bet they would have drafted both. Castle was really just like the perfect one, like aside from his 3-point volume, like young, productive, long, good passer. And yeah, I guess like the thing that like Castle wanted to play point guard wouldn't really work with the Thunder because they have a bunch of ball handlers. And I mean, I don't think that's going to work out in San Antonio, but it definitely wouldn't have worked. At least in San Antonio, he's going to get to try, right? Like in OKC, there wouldn't have been room for that. But I think Klingon, I could have seen him taking. And then another one I liked or two more that I liked that I thought they could have taken that were on the board were Khalil Ware and Jacoby Walter. Ware is just another one, like wingspan freak, really productive, pretty young, great physical numbers. And then same thing with Jacoby Walter, right? Just like wingspan, BPM, free throw rate guy, like all of this stuff that, and of course, like, fairly young, not like the youngest freshman. He was only like almost 20 at the time of the draft. But yeah, those were the guys who I would have guessed that that the Thunder would have taken if Topic hadn't fallen.
Right, I can see a lot of those guys being Thunder type guys, and Steph Castle is just a two-way freak out there. I caught him at least most recently, probably a preseason game against Orlando, I think it was, but he was just everywhere defensively and showed a little more.
He was good in their most recent game against the Rockets, where I mean, offense is gonna be very questionable.
Right.
Still, I think he has some nice moments, nice passes, but yeah, his defense is awesome already. Like so long, athletic, great instincts, can really move his feet. Like he's a great defensive player.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously it's his head coach from college, UConn, Dan Hurley, but he was like comping him to Drew Holiday right out of the gates. Like he just had this defensive menace who can pass, who can shoot a little bit, score a little bit, bully ball, and he showed some really great two-way feel, good instincts from the couple games that I've seen so far, up in the pros at least. And then Klingon, another strong defender. Khalil Ware as well, like some really impressive skill, like handles as well for that length as a big man. So could definitely see these type of guys fit with the Thunder. So moving up towards just this season, I figure we hit some quick hitters. You were writing some articles for Sportscasting with the squad, Jackson and Ez and Matt. So I thought we might just quick hitters, run over some of your questions that you asked for each team, and just where your thoughts are on them for now. So
sure.
With the Thunder, can their busy offseason propel them to a championship heights? They added Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein. Like, are they the favorites?
I don't know if I can call them the favorites just because the Celtics exist.
That's fair.
But I definitely think they're the West favorites. And yeah, I mean, through a couple games, I feel just as good. Like their defense is truly absurd. Obviously, Chet is amazing. Caruso has been incredible. Shea has had an amazing start to the year on the defensive end. Like very small sample size, but they're like far and away the best defense in the league through 3 games. And of course, it's 3 games, but and their offense hasn't even really gotten up to speed yet. Like they're not hitting threes yet. But I really just believe in Shea. I really do feel confident about OKC's ability to go the distance, at least making the finals. I don't know if they're going to be able to beat Boston, but especially given like Denver doesn't look great. Phoenix, I have a lot of questions about. Minnesota, I have a lot of questions about. Like outside of OKC and maybe like Dallas, I feel like they're kind of, they should be making a deep run this year.
Clearly, the Thunder are loaded. I mean, when you're the second in point differential, third in offense, fourth in defense last year, and you add 2 of the highest impact defenders there are in Hartenstein and Caruso. Hartenstein's out. He hasn't even played yet in the regular season with this team. Like their defensive impact and as a team should just be off the charts. Like they should, I think, have the number 1 defense up there right with Boston, Orlando, and maybe even Cleveland. But like they're up there, and it's going to be hard to top that defense. I think they should definitely be top team in the West, at least in the regular season. And sometimes you got to take your lumps in the playoffs. They saw some weaknesses, like you mentioned earlier, against Dallas. maybe they address those a little bit with a little more on-ball experience for some of the other guys once the ball leaves Shea's hands. And I definitely think Chet could take a leap here and be like a real defensive anchor, number 2, mismatch hunter, strong rebounder, incredible shot blocker. And I'm hoping to see a little quicker trigger on the catch and shoot, a little more decisiveness with the catch and shoot, because he always kind of wants to put the ball on the floor and attack, which makes him special. But like if he can get that pick and pop quick trigger down, he could really be unstoppable, playing off a bunch of these other creators that can drive and kick and keep the ball moving that way. And obviously a versatile defender. I'd like to see a little bit more mobility guarding pick and rolls, and maybe some finishing at the rim improvements as well to really round out his game to take another leap.
For sure.
So hopping around, quick hitters, Orlando Magic. You already know, represent. Will the added shooting help catapult them up the standings this year? They added KCP. They kind of swapped out Markelle Fultz, and they just kind of let him walk, added KCP, and moved Gary Harris down a peg. They've probably given a little more opportunity to Anthony Black with this second unit, and they have Jet Howard and Tristan da Silva kind of just waiting in the wings just in case they need to be called upon, or maybe someone impresses and steals somebody else's spot. So far, a few games in, they look like an ever-moving machine around, like moving the ball, relocating, off-ball cuts, and they shot more threes in game 1 this year than they did in any game last year, and they hit quite a few of them. I know they made 49, or they shot 49 of them. I forget exactly how many they made, but it was like 40% or something like that. So really hot shooting night, because that's, to me, the one thing they've been missing is they almost rely on Paulo or Franz having to get 20 or 30 points. They can never just have a night where, oh, we hit 15 threes even though our guys weren't feeling it, so we pulled it out off the team hitting 15 threes. So do you think this year the added shooting brings them up to a top 3 seed this year?
I could see it, and yeah, I mean, the stats look great, right? Like, they were 29th in the league last year in threes per game. This year, they're in the top 10. Their offense has been good. The only Magic game I've been able to watch so far was the one that they got crushed by the Grizzlies, so that's my only real viewing experience of the Magic. But I know they won their 2 other games, and yeah, like, as long as the supporting cast can continue building this offense around Paolo and Franz, like, I believe in the defense. The defense is going to be great. I have no worries about that side of the ball, but yeah, just consistent spacing. And I think just like Franz, the main thing is just like Franz and Paolo continuing to improve, Paolo getting better as a decision maker and being more aggressive going downhill, and hopefully Franz is shot rebounding and continuing to just do his thing as a creator and jumbo playmaker and defender. Yeah, I mean, especially with the way like the Bucks are looking, right? The Sixers aren't going to be great in the regular season, at least. Like, I think there's some risk with New York in terms of depth, and like if they ever have like a Brunson or a Cat injury. So yeah, outside of Boston and I think Cleveland, who is just great as well, I could see the Magic easily having a top 4 seed. It wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if they're ready to really make a run in the playoffs yet. They're still a very young team. And they pushed the Cavs to 7 last year. To be fair, a somewhat hobbled Cavs team, but still, they pushed the Cavs to 7 last year. And yeah, they are a team that I'm more optimistic about than some in the East, just because I think their path is internal development from young players. Whereas, like, what's the path from Milwaukee, right? Like, everyone stays healthy, Lillard regresses back, or like, the path for other teams, I think more has to happen. Whereas the Magic, it's just like, okay, yeah, your young guys get better, you're probably going to be good. Like, they were a damn good team last year, and their offense was horrible. So
right, yeah, I mean they were the 5th seed last year. The East was super close, like 2 through 8 was only separated by 4 games. They finished 5th. They had the second best defense in the league. And
yeah, I definitely got to dive more into the Magic offense, because I mean, who knows how sustainable the shooting is going to be like that. I don't know if they're going to shoot 40% from 3 all season, but I think the volume is certainly encouraging, right? Like, that's more important to me. And the Magic play my Pacers in about an hour, so I'm actually
all right.
sure
We're gonna have to check that one out, no doubt. And yeah, I mean, some promising signs for Franz. He's made 3 threes or more. He made 4 in the last one, so 3, 3, and 4 so far. made threes in his first 3 games. He's shooting over 40, either 40 or 45% so far this season from
Yeah,
three. And obviously, it's a big concern everyone has. Will he be able to shoot? And I'm one who definitely believes last year was the outlier. Like he shot 35% the
for
first
sure.
2 years, and
I'm with
he's just so good at everything else that it's not that it doesn't matter, but like he's a star without the 3 point shot in my eyes, like a borderline all star,
Yeah,
putting
I
up
think so
those
too.
defensive impact numbers, like 20 points a game, like offensive creator, pick and roll. So, I mean, the Magic got guys for days. I could talk Magic for days, but this is the quick hitter section. We're jumping to the Spurs here. We got you mentioned Steph Castle before. They obviously signed the point guard Chris Paul to throw lobs to Wemby for the rest of the season. So is this just going to be a league pass team where they're going to be incredible to watch because you got CP3 Wemby lobs, you got Vassell hitting tough shots when he's healthy, you get to watch Castle make some fun plays, or will they actually make a push for the play in the West?
I honestly can't see them making a push for the play-in. The West is too stacked, and I think that roster is too limited. Wemby is obviously incredible, but like we saw in the Dallas game, like on games where Wemby's not playing his best, which is going to happen. He's still a 20-year-old. They're just not going to have the horses in some games. Like their defense, I think, is going to be better. Like they totally own the Rockets for long stretches of that game, but then gave up a big run because a lot of their perimeter defenders, like Barnes, Champagny, even CP3 at this stage are pretty exploitable. Um, and I think this season for the Spurs, like I kind of said in that, I think is just like figuring out more about your young core. Like, is Steph Castle going to prove that he can be a point guard long term? Like, what are we going to get from Sohan with a bigger role this year? Like, is Branham or Wesley or any of these guys going to break out and show that they can be like rotation pieces? I think that's still the clearest, the most important thing. Because like outside of Wemby and Vassell, who's currently hurt, like this, I don't think anybody is set for that Spurs core. Like there's nobody outside of those two where I feel like these guys are going to be on the Spurs in 5 years. Like I'm confident Vassell and Wemby will be on the Spurs in 5 years, mostly because Vassell got paid and Wemby's probably going to be there for a long time, but I'm not super confident about any of the other Spurs. Like, they drafted Castle in the lottery, obviously. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Castle, like you said, probably the safest bet of the field because he's a top 5 pick here, and is feels like a Spurs guy, just like he feels like a Thunder guy, like just a good team first, two-way player, can bring an impact defender, move the ball, and then obviously his on-ball creation is a big question mark for if he'll be more of a point guard or more of an off guard in this league. But yeah, I mean, a lot of interesting prospects with Jeremy Socon and Blake Wesley and Malachi Branham, among others that you touch on in the piece. But it's kind of a what if for the rest. So yeah, I don't think I would pencil them in quite yet for the play in. But it's not a bad time to be in the lottery for these next 2 drafts while you already got Wemby on the team and might have an outside chance at one of these huge stars sitting at the top of the next 2 drafts with your Flag or your Boozer, your DeBonsa, your VJ Edgecombe. I know who just randomly, but you're a pretty big fan of someone in this upcoming class outside of Flag. Was there anyone
Um,
specific or just
I still want the Spurs to find their lead guard of the future. I mean, I don't think it's Castle. Maybe they do, and they want to draft. They won't draft. Like, there's so many great guard prospects at the top of the draft, and like the big four to me of Dylan Harper from at Rutgers, Nolan Traore, St. Quentin in France, VJ Edgecombe at Baylor, and Kasparis Yakuchonis at Illinois. Like any ending up with any of those 4 lead guards, I'd probably prefer one of the better shooters. So like Yakuchonis or Edgecombe maybe, just because like you're always going to want players who can play off ball when you have Wembanyama. But I think
right?
any of those 4 would be really encouraging and like getting their long-term defensive, their long-term offensive lead guard is still something that I don't think the Spurs have, right? Because like, obviously Wemby you hope can be your primary offensive guy, but you still need someone else to handle the ball and to occasionally do stuff, right? So
For sure. And Traore feels like a Spurs guy. I could definitely see that fit with just the connectiveness and especially if that shooting hits. But now that you say it, I really want to see VJ Edgecombe there, just
Yeah, that would be sick.
flying, tearing down the rims like a downhill force coming off a Wemby screen. Like
That would be
that's the
awesome.
one.
I really like
That's the
that.
one that Spurs fans should be looking for. So we're in the quick hitter section. We're off to the next one already. The Knicks. Will their offseason, their moves, push them past the Celtics? That's a big one. I don't know. I'm gonna let
Yeah,
you answer
probably
this one.
not.
I mean,
At least based on the first game, right? I do think the Knicks are going to be fine. I don't know. I'm not confident in them beating the Celtics. I'm not like confident in anyone beating the Celtics. But this is how I felt about this move at the time. Like it was a high ceiling move with a potential to go wrong as we like as they gel, they have to gel and figure out the defense and all of that stuff. But giving Brunson a secondary spacing and scoring option is really, really great in Karl Anthony Towns. And I think, OG and Mikhail should be a great wing duo. The depth is going to be a big question with them as well, right? Just like who can they trust off the bench? Deuce McBride looks great, but especially with Precious and Mitch Rob hurt, like having to rely on Jericho Sims as your backup big is pretty tough. Like, do they bring anyone in? So yeah, I don't know if I think the Celtics that they can push past the Celtics, but I think with that trade, they've probably got the best shot of any team in the East.
yeah. And despite my hesitance in the question, I am with you that I think the Knicks kind of moved into that tier with the Celtics, and really more so in the East, at least, of just being like a top two, and really just with that floor balance. Like just like in theory, on paper, like you have this 50-win team. Brunson takes a pay cut, bringing this like all NBA level impact, and you upgrade three of the positions with like borderline all stars, like two defensive anchor type wings in theory that at least they were. Mikal Bridges was on the Suns, and we'll see if he can rekindle some of that now that he's got less usage than he did in Brooklyn and can kind of revert to more of this team first defender, hit the open three and the tough shot when called upon. And OG Anunoby, just a lockdown defender down there as well, with, like you said, probably the best floor spacing five in the league in Towns, who can put the ball on the floor and drive a little bit, who can initiate a little bit. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you had a different leading scorer like night to night with this team, because Brunson's facilitating. Obviously, he should lead the team in scoring, but like, there's just so many guys that could pop off for 25 points on any given night here, combined with that floor balance of like surrounding Brunson and Towns with these like big elite wings. You got Josh Hart and Deuce McBride bringing that energy from the guard position. It's a shame they got all those injuries at center, because Precious and Mitchell Imrob bring that some more like springiness off the bench. Like I like their depth until the depth disappears, and that's the NBA. It happens fast, so maybe they will
Sure.
be on the hunt for a rotation big. I don't know if they can afford a Clint Capella, but he's at least a reliable defender, rim
Well, they
runner.
lost all their picks in the they don't really have
Yeah,
picks to ship off.
yeah.
Maybe they can package some of their young players or some of the. I think they have 4 rookies on the roster, so
Mm.
who knows?
There you go. They got,
Maybe they can.
shout out Chuma Okeke. He's, or Okeke now. He's up there still, unless he got waived or something. But
I
I
feel like
saw he was on the Knicks.
he definitely was on the Knicks at some point.
At some point, Chuma was up there. So shout out to him for still
Shout out
doing it.
Chuba. Agree with that.
Yeah, you got it. Any chance you get, you got to shout out Chuma. So on the quick hitters, we're moving right on to the Pistons. How much will they learn about their key core pieces? They added Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, some vets. They got Cade as the main guy. I got my eye on Ivy. I'm waiting for him to pop with his quick first step, north south burst. Like, I want to see him like get more touches and more defined role. Maybe some more pick and rolls with Jalen Duren. Like who's gonna pop from this team, or are they just kind of got Cade and need to flip the roster over by next year? Like, who do you believe in long term here?
It's been a pretty encouraging start, honestly, to me for the Pistons, despite them being 3-0. I know, or 0-3. I know Pistons fans don't want to see that, but
Mm.
they lost 3 close games to 3 of the 4 East semifinalists from last year, and nearly beat the Celtics, nearly beat the Pacers. Were competitive with the Cavs, and Cade's looking great. Like turnovers, whatever, but He's looking like he's hitting a new level as a driver, so overwhelming with his strength, with his pacing, and like he's managing a career high in true shooting while the three is not even falling yet. So like once the three starts falling, I think he's going to be just like he's playing at an all-star level to start the season. And I think Ivy, while still I think has some of the same issues when it comes to like pacing and rhythm and all that stuff, like he's been solid to start this season. I think he's had a couple good games playing off of Cade as like a secondary creator. His passing has been pretty nice. I've noticed some defensive stuff from him as well. Duran's the only one who I think, especially on defense, has still been not wonderful. But I honestly, yeah, like I feel pretty okay about the Pistons, like as okay as you can feel about about a winless team, right? Like they've got real players. Unlike last year, they've got real coaching. Like they're clearly feel more resilient, and like Malik Beasley's been solid. Tobias has been kind of bad, and hopefully he can not stop being ass. But anyways, like Beasley is a good addition. Fontecchio, Tim Hardaway Jr. Like they have some other real NBA players. Like these guys aren't amazing, but they're real players, right? Paul Reed is like a fine enough backup big. I love that, Barr is literally on the floor, but JB Bickerstaff is not playing Duran and Stewart together anymore. So like, yeah, it sucks for the Pistons to start the season the way they did wins wise, and like it's not going to get much easier. Like they play the Heat today, then they play the Knicks next week. But like they've got some easier games coming up against the Sixers, against the Nets, against the Hornets, the Hawks. So hopefully they can start racking up some wins before they get to like an easier portion of their schedule. But yeah, I don't know. So early returns, I feel all right about that.
All right, yeah. I mean, they definitely have talent. I want to see how this talent can fit together. I mean, they've been in the lottery for so many years now, just adding it up. That at a certain point, they got to do something. But I mean, Cade's a real talent. Like he's a clear star level player that almost gets a bad rap because of the Pistons and maybe because of like the usage and the load they're asking him to do, and the efficiency might not be there. Like if you don't surround like a creator with much shooting and play finishers and good players, like it's going to be tough to get the best out of them. So we hope the best for Cade to kind of find that mix. And then, yeah, I mean, and I don't even know if we mentioned Asar Thompson or Ron Holland, but those are some super explosive wings.
They really miss Asar. I think his athleticism and playmaking on the wing is going to be big for them. Just to have another ball handler. The Pistons really don't have any on-ball juice outside of Cade and Ivy. And yeah. I definitely think there's been a little much like Cade Helio ball at times for my likes in terms of just like sustainability. But I do think like once Asar gets back, maybe Sasser can like find a groove, because Beasley
can light it up.
Beasley and Tim Hardaway and those guys, like they're off-ball shooters, the microwaves. You don't want them like really running your offense and creating shots. So that's going to be something to definitely kind of figure out. But overall, like not feeling too bad, honestly, all things considered.
Yeah, it could kind of return them to more of a secondary off-ball role, and Asar brings that juice. I mean, he really popped as a rookie. Both of the Thompson twins did, but he brings a lot to the table. So last team here, shifting gears one last time, the Brooklyn Nets. Oh, the Nets. Sorry, Nets. What will the outlook of this young core look like after this season? Can they even like call their roster a young core? Like who's going to be here 2 years from now on this team?
Yeah.
Like it's a collection of talent. I mean, Cam Thomas gets buckets. Ben Simmons is technically still on the team. Nick Claxton, killer defender.
Claxton is great. Yeah, that's like their one sure thing, and then a bunch of wings that teams are going to want to trade for.
Right. So exactly, it's just like a collection of talent. Not even talent's too strong of a word. Just a collection of players that other team might trade for, just like random pieces to get more picks for, and really try to capture the flag this year. I think is the outlook that will ultimately be. But they got some killer prospects in the draft the next 2 years, so it's not the worst time to be bad. So what do you think this outlook? Is there anyone you like on this roster that you got to give a shout out to?
It's pretty barren, as you said, and it really is like who is going to be here in 2-3 years. And I think they don't have any like legit stars on the roster, I don't think that's super controversial or anything to say, right? Like they're a pretty trash team for a reason. Like I'm not a huge Cam Thomas guy. He's an awesome scorer and seems to be improving at some of the other stuff, but still like the defense is atrocious. And I'm just not crazy about his long-term outlook, but like can any of like the flyers they took on guys like Zaire Williams or the last like Trendon Watford, Jalen Wilson, Keon Johnson, like can any of those guys just turn it into like rotation pieces you feel decent about that you can get on good contracts? Like Noah Clowney, can he take another step? One of your few first round picks that you have on the roster, like in house, just because Nets haven't had any picks for the last decade or whatever. But yeah, I think it really is just like figuring out like, are any of these guys going to be anything? Can Dariq Whitehead stay healthy, find a stride? Like, can just like trying to figure out. I think because obviously the Nets aren't going to be good this year. Hey, they beat the Bucks, but still, it's just a thing of like, who's going to be here in a couple years? Anybody? And if not, I guess that's an answer regardless. So,
right. It's not looking great in Brooklyn, but also Cam Johnson, like you mentioned, he's probably a good trade target.
Yeah, he and Dorian Finney-Smith, their teams are going to be calling about them all season, I can imagine.
Yeah, he's proven to be a good player and in the right situation with that Suns team, and just good rope piece. Maybe down in Sacramento, they seem to be looking for a four that can defend or shoot or score a little bit, round out that lineup a little more, little extra depth, but. That's all the teams on our sportscasting quick hitters. So I appreciate you taking the time today, Ben. It's been a pleasure talking hoops. You can find his work at Swish Theory and also Sportscasting, Sportskeeda, Pro 16 League. Check out his Twitter, YouTube at BJPF_. And it's been a pleasure, Ben.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, just check me out wherever. Appreciate you having me on and enjoying the pod. So awesome, man.
I appreciate the kind words. We'll have to hit a Swish Theory playback one of these days soon.
For sure, I'd love to hop on one of them and just give some live reactions.
Oh yeah, I like it. We'll make it happen. All right, have a good one. Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast, hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's website, theswishtheory.com.